Hello everyone. It was a long time no see without new episodes, but we are breaking that with Architects Forum and with special interviews that we will have with our guests, of course, keynote speakers. Now I'm here at our studio with Mr. Zoltán Neville from French architecture studio Coldefy, and we will spend some nice time talking about him, about his professional life, and of course the work of Coldefy. So I hope that you will enjoy. Please, if you don't mind, click like, subscribe, follow, and everything that goes with it, because it means a lot to us. And it's in the same old purpose of sharing the architectural knowledge and educating the public about the domain of architecture and the architects themselves. I hope that you will enjoy. As at the beginning, first of all, thank you for joining us at Architects Forum. It's a pleasure that we have a French office present. It's not that we didn't try to reach to them. And at the beginning, I would like to talk a little bit about you because your professional and maybe not private story, but your development as an architect is really interesting for me because you were born in Los Angeles. That's where you finished your bachelor studies, yes?
Yeah.
At University of California.
Yeah, Southern California, yeah.
And after that, you moved to France.
Yeah.
Nice choice. To city of Lille to pursue a master's in landscape architecture. Am I right?
No, actually, well, first, I'll go through it. But first, thanks so much for having me here on the podcast. I think it's really great what you guys are doing. And I'm happy, even though I'm not French, to represent French architecture as much as I can. But yeah, so I was born and grew up and did my first architecture, so 5-year studies, professional degree in Los Angeles. I worked there for a few years. And around this time, there was so I finished my studies around the beginning of 2010, and so there was an economic crisis around that time, 2008, 2009, 10. My classmates from a year ahead of me, everyone was unemployed, and so there was a big exodus of people looking for work, especially who wanted to actually stay in the profession and not get sidetracked to something else. Many went to China at that time or other places, and I thought, because my family, I have a dual citizenship with a Hungarian citizenship, I thought it would be great to go to Europe. I think even from being a student, it was really obvious that the culture, design culture and architecture culture, I mean, everything around the creative arts is stronger in Europe as compared to the US. And so I came to France first to work. And so I actually worked in Paris for about a year before I started working with Coldefy in Lille. And then I got a master's of architecture in France as well, but primarily while I was working. So it was really to be able to join the Chamber of Architects and become, officially in Europe as well. So that's the story.
Yeah. The reason why I asked specifically for the landscape architecture, because as I saw, ENSAP, it means École Nationale Supérieure d'Architecture Paysagiste.
So that school has architecture and landscape together.
Okay, but you finished architecture. I mean, master's in architecture. Okay.
But it is maybe interesting to note, at least compared to other schools in France, the architecture degrees are very broad So I did projects that were more related to the urban scale. So maybe that landscape urban part was present in the studies as well. It was not just making buildings. Yeah,
I understand. and you just mentioned, and I want to know why. I mean, why is your opinion like that? What defined it? You said that architecture and design culture is stronger in Europe than in the US. Please explain.
So that's my opinion from my experience, but I think so. I don't say that. I think there's a lot of great designers and great architects in the US. I think what it is more the context around it. maybe especially compared to Western Europe. So, for example, in France, there's big policy and strategy from the city, from the government about how the city should be. A lot of promotion of culture, museums, exhibitions. So young children are educated and going to cultural events and this kind of thing. And I think that generates a context where your clients and users are more educated about design and architecture and culture than in the US, where typically, especially on the West Coast, it was kind of the Wild West, where you do whatever you want. There was very little heritage, and to be honest, the economics goes above all. So if you are within the rules and you can pay for it, then it's more service oriented. And I think in France, for example, when I was a student, and that was one of the things that kind of convinced me to come to the other side. I saw there's very nice social housing projects in France that win awards. They're good architecture, and those are commissioned by the state and part of programs. And I think that, for example, would never ever happen in the US. Very, very rarely. So I think the context is a little bit better to pursue design. Yeah.
So maybe over there in the US, not the market, but the decisions and everything is maybe, if I understood correctly, led by commercial side of that, and not the public interest, public aspect, or cultural, educational purpose of that.
Yeah, I think, and I think there's a second side to that, in my opinion, that it's democracy, and part of the democracy and how it exists there is that everyone's opinion is equal. So when you get to aesthetics, it starts to be a question where just because I'm educated as an architect and you're, a lawyer, it doesn't mean that your opinion is less than mine about aesthetics. Mm-hmm. So that's another. I think that also generates a kind of whole culture of kind of hyper-rationalized design, where designers do good design, but they have to hide it under economic objectives, efficiency objectives, and there's this kind of like, data and engineering, everything is over-analyzed to be able to get to the end point, instead of a more, for example, poetic or humanistic approach, where I think in France is acceptable that as an architect you can have an aesthetic value, and people will listen to you as a professional on that. So,
or like in Japan.
Yeah, or in Japan. Exactly.
It's your job to do I am not interfering.
Exactly.
Okay, so there, I didn't get that impression that there are, like, if I understood correctly again, numerous layers of justifications of a project to be accepted by all parties involved, coming from all different backgrounds or levels of education or understanding of a certain project. And we stopped at Lille and the master's degree. After that, you're playing
after, I was working for Coldefy all during this time. I started as a project leader. Actually, my story and the office's story are quite interweaved, because when I started in Lille, the studio was about 12 people, so quite small, and they had the chance. They were just, when I joined, they were just finishing the construction of the Hong Kong Design Institute in Hong Kong, which was an open competition that they had the chance and the skill, of course, but to win. But it was a kind of singular international experience, and the rest of the portfolio was very local in the north of France. It's kind of historic stakeholders and actors there working on local projects, and so for the next, let's say, 6 years, I really worked together with them, kind of hand in hand, to try to build off of that experience in Hong Kong and slowly build up bigger projects, more international caliber, let's say. So a handful of things in France, some of which I'll present at the
tomorrow.
Tomorrow
tomorrow and day after tomorrow.
And then as well working on basically the international activity. I mean, because of my background that I came from California, and also that California is such a diverse place on its own. During my studies, I had already visited Asia and other places, Europe as well. And so I was kind of a key person in the office who could deal with those kinds of projects, which were so much different.
Everything abroad.
Yeah, well, especially and our abroad started very much Asia focused. I mean, we won that project in Hong Kong, and Hong Kong, I don't know how much you know the context, but it's a very corporate world. Now it's getting cultural, but at that time, between 2005, 2010, it was still very corporate. So design office from Europe didn't have a big role there. And so we shifted over to China and Shenzhen, which was still very open at that time. And that was kind of the first step we were doing. And little by little, then we grow internationally. And now we're about 50 people. And in that time, when we opened our Shanghai office, I moved there for about 2.5 years to help our local team kind of set everything up and follow the key projects. So it's been an interesting journey.
And that was my next question, because if I understood correctly again, you won the competition for that public art space in Shenzhen.
Yeah, in Shenzhen.
And that initiated your relocation to Shanghai and to China in an effort to build an office over there. And please tell us more about that experience and how it went on.
It was all a kind of learning experience. I think we're not a young office, but a younger office, and I think a lot of our success is partially from naivety, that we're enthusiastic and naive and don't yet anticipate all the complexity. And one of that was so we were trying to continue on our activity in Asia, moving from Hong Kong to China. I had one colleague, a Chinese colleague, French-Chinese colleague, who was there doing development and slowly helping us to make key partnerships and position. And we had the chance early on to win a big project. And our choices was either to let the local architects basically develop it and see what we could do, or to set up shop in town to be able to be close enough to actually follow it. So we immediately set up a team there in Shanghai, and to
have more control.
Yeah, to have more control and work. I mean, and also, this was it's before COVID, and also cultural, that the Chinese, everything works very quickly. There's a lot of improvisation. And so every day, it's really important to be in the same city. And if something comes up, to be able to go into their office and say, hey, what's going on? And let's work this out together.
Yes, of course. But the main part of the team was back in France.
No,
correct? Or others shifted with you, relocated with you?
No, we very quickly from that project, within 2 years, and then we started to be involved in other competitions and things. We very quickly built up a team to about 10 people. So that office, the studio in Shanghai, when I was there until 2020, basically, was a kind of, so not an independent office, but we did design through development, of course, in connection with France, and we share ideas all together, but we didn't have a French design team working on that. So we did the design there. The same as how we work. We have an office in Paris and Lille as well. So we worked all in the same way. We have designers, we have people with more technical experience, and we share topics in the very beginning between all the offices, all the partners and directors, and then the project team works as from A to Z as much as they can.
Yes,
so,
understood. But yeah. I mean, of course, it was the idea of the distance. Working on two groups, if it was like that, two groups of people working on the same project, but in different corners of the world, with the time zones difference and everything.
Yes.
That must have been, in that case, would be a great obstacle, and it would be difficult. But you managed. Anyway, you managed. You built up that office in Shenzhen, the project, is it over or
I will
it's still
also,
under construction?
It's still under construction. We won the competition at the end of 2016, and it entered officially construction in January of 2020. But the first year was a kind of symbolic year. They broke ground and nothing happened. Yeah, but now they just topped off the structure. It's a 100-meter tall structure, 85,000 square meters, and hopefully in the second half of next year it will be done. But it will.
We can expect a ceremony of opening the Public Arts Center.
Yeah, so it will be almost a 10-year story, depending how things go.
And it will match with the. It just came up to my mind with the pavilion, French pavilion at Expo Osaka.
Actually, I think the French pavilion will be done first. Yeah,
it's early.
That will open next April. Yeah, we were really lucky to. It's funny because it's in Asia, but Japan and China are so different that the context and the working culture, everything is very different. And of course, the World Expo is its own kind of special context. But yeah, we were lucky to win that competition in the middle of last year, and they have to deliver it for the opening day is April 13th, I think, of 2025. So no choice but to deliver by then.
The deadline won't be changed.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's coming close. I mean, close, but another less than 11 months.
Yeah. So high speed.
It will be busy period. And okay, partially you just answered before on a question I wanted to ask. When you shifted cultures from US to France and started working with Coldefy in the local office, as you said, dealing with local problems and local projects. I wanted to know what were the first maybe obstacles and problems that you dealt with that you, of course, weren't expecting, and what that taught you, and what conclusions and, of course, lessons you learned from there.
Yeah, actually, I think that for me, this aspect of the work is one of the most exciting things. I mean, I don't know, it's like the chicken or the... No, not the mistakes, but the learning different things. I mean, maybe that's why I'm always doing, projects with people from different cultures. But I think even in the project, when we do a new type of project, I think it's so interesting to learn about, you do a theater for the first time and you learn about how the artists prepare behind stage, and this, I think, it's super fascinating. So for me, coming to France, of course, the language was an issue, but an expected issue. So I learned French and became comfortable with all of that. I think the one kind of practical thing that was unexpected, and I guess it was just because I didn't think about it, but we were all on AutoCAD platform, and I was a quite good AutoCAD drawer at the time, and I never thought that these kind of command-based softwares, actually all the commands are different in a different language. So they're, they
translated.
Not only was the keyboard, it's not the QWERTY, it's the AZERTY, but plus all the commands and their shortcuts of AutoCAD French at the time. I mean, now we're more on Revit, but I had never even considered, I never even thought about that. So there was a lot of small logistical things like this around the office, and then I think in a bigger professional sense, I think. I was pleasantly surprised at this, I don't know if power is the right word, but the presence that the architect could have, where they could say, around the table in a competition setting, the engineers say, this is our recommendation, but the architects, in terms of the quality of the space, it's up to you to try to help this project win. I had never really experienced that in the US, and I think the attention to urbanism and the society was much more
up to your taste.
and more important than the technical part. So it wasn't approaching the projects by this detail and this material, although eventually it gets to that. It was especially about the people and the neighborhood, and so this I
that awareness maybe about the other aspects beyond architecture.
Yeah.
It sounds like you would never choose. I mean, not now, but in someday in future, choose to go back to US and work in US. I mean, it's just an impression. I get that it feels more natural for you, or it suits you better to be in this European context and way of dealing with.
I think now, now what I like to do, I mean, and also as a studio in general, I mean, to work on things that have a public impact somehow. So it could be any kind of project. I mean, it could be a public project, a cultural project, of course, that's easy, but even housing project or mixed use, I mean, if it has some kind of, and you need the support of the client and you need the support of the city, and to do something that can really, benefit the community. And I think those projects are harder to find in the US, at least until my experience. Maybe they're okay, but I would be happy to work on that there as well if there's the opportunity. Of course, the personal lifestyle is another
difference. Another thing.
I'm happy not to drive an hour every morning to work and this kind of stuff.
Researching Coldefy and the background and the design philosophy of the studio, I came up to that term that Coldefy is designing sensitive architecture. Yes, I forgot. I remember the word, but I forgot the whole term. Sensitive architecture, and what does it mean that Coldefy is designing sensitive architecture? I mean, I did get the explanation, but I would like to know more about that.
Sure, I think that for us, what it all comes down to in the end, I think, is architecture and design, or whatever it is we're doing, whatever scale, is that linking back to humans and to our senses. So it's really important not to overcomplicate everything. I mean, it's great to read theory and to be aware, and philosophy and sociology and everything, but we really want to design and make environments that improve people's lives and that help. And it's great because we're all people, even though we might have different opinions, but more or less we all need natural light. We all have, we don't want to be too hot or too cold. We want to have access to nature. And so these kind of fundamental things. And for us, this kind of sensitive architecture is about that, about connecting to the senses and connecting to our kind of shared humanity in that way. So there's, of course, urbanism and the city and everything that's more complex. But to be sensitive and make sure that as people living in the projects or living around the projects or living across from the project and looking at it every day, it's pleasing to us and it improves, our life through the senses that we have. I think
those projects make them feel good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Whenever they're using those spaces or they're passing by, just like you said. Yeah. So it's a nice approach and a nice philosophy. It's a design philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah, and not just the built environment, but also kind of harmony between everything. I mean, with the natural environment, how the infrastructure is working, how our transportation is working, everything that we have in our, this societal life that we have together life. In cities. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you. Discovering your biography and the places where you lived and worked is just right that some kind of comparison, distinguishing differences between living and working in US, in Europe, and in China, because those are like three, I believe, very contrasting. Not cultures, but domains of living and working, and contexts are quite different. And, you partially already replied on that, and But if you would like to add something,
Yeah, absolutely.
Just comparing those three.
I think it's really interesting, and it goes back a little bit to what you asked about what were some of the unexpected problems arriving to Lille, France. Plus, that was almost 15 years ago. So even at that time, I didn't have a smartphone. So you can imagine you're in a different context, different language, kind of disconnected in a way. But I think, of course, there's the professional differences, you know. Just simply the cities are different. I mean, if you're looking at a site in Shanghai and a site in Paris or in Los Angeles, the conditions between old world and heritage and new world and, you know, all of this, you know, the number of people. Shanghai has 25 plus million people. So it's completely different sizes and scales. So of course the professional problems are different, and very quickly you should learn like the phases in different projects, when the permits are. I mean, there's all that professional thing, but all of that you can learn relatively quickly. I think that the most difficult and nuanced part is the working culture. So it's not necessarily architecture, but everything, and that goes into many aspects. For example, the hierarchy of a meeting. If you're in the city and you give a presentation in China, there's a much different way that the meeting unrolls and decisions are made.
The dynamics
then
of
compared to and also even inside the office, how people communicate, what's the expectation. For example, in Europe, I think if you respond to an email in 5 days, it's quite normal, and until then, you know, you kind of assume someone's getting to it eventually. In China, in 1 day, someone already wonders what's wrong, why you haven't responded after 24 hours. So I mean, there's a lot of these kind of social pieces behind decision making, what happens in a meeting, how the hierarchy works, how to navigate all the processes. So that's the biggest difference. But sorry, rambling a little bit. But no, back to your the original question: what's the difference? One time I heard someone say, I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was in a conference or something, that the Americas is for entrepreneurship, Europe is for creativity, and Asia is for execution. And it's a little bit oversimplified, but I think as a whole, it's still kind of true in my experience. I think a lot of the most creative ideas are coming out of Europe, but that entrepreneurial spirit is missing a little bit. This like daring to do something new and not afraid to fail, how it's kind of happening in the Americas, and in Asia is really mastering the execution. I mean, every startup idea that comes out in the end becomes 10 times better, 10 times bigger in Asia. So I think, in my experience, I think that's generally true, and we try to kind of mix everything together to have the best of all the worlds. So, yeah, and
obviously you're succeeding in that.
We try to take what works for us and meets the objectives and where we want our projects to get there, our design to get, our company culture and everything, and try to combine the best of everything. And it's not just me. I mean, our studio overall has a big international demographic, let's say, and everyone from the founders to the young architects generally has interest and curiosity about the world and likes exchanging. And so so it's kind of part of the culture to take the best of everything,
of all the world,
and try to make something out of it.
Yes. You came back you set up the office in Shenzhen, and you came back from China, but you came back to Budapest.
Yeah.
You set up another office in Budapest, or
it's in progress.
It's
in progress. This was a little bit less of a plan. It was part of what happened was from China. At that time, in 2019, we started to be quite successful in China, but we were very international French Chinese, and I really thought that the next step for us would be able to be considered as a kind of, on the, let's call it D1 level of architects in other places as well. And so, but from China, it's very difficult to do things from there. And so I thought it was important to be in Europe and closer to everyone, and kind of, because we learned a lot in China, working on projects much faster, bigger scale, really our abilities grew a lot, and to bring that back to France and kind of expand our team. And it started to work. We won a project in Florida and the United States for museum and memorial, and we were shortlisted in Brussels, and actually we won the competition for the European Parliament in Brussels. But COVID happened, and in Paris the rules were very strict, and for almost 2 years we couldn't work in the office because there was a limit of how many people per square meter based on the space and the distance.
Something similar here too.
And at that time I thought, why not, my grandparents were from Hungary, why not work from home from there, change of scenery, have a little bit more air compared to Paris, and
going back to roots.
Going back to the roots, and I really liked it. And we also got a project not so long after, which is now under construction, and I started to be connected with the university there, and similar, I think, as your goal with this podcast and everything, I thought it was really great also to bring some of my experience back to the young architects and local designers who are just starting their career, and kind of help the country and the culture, not just the country, but even the region. So now I'm in Budapest, and we have a project office there, which is basically me and some external partners who are working on this construction site. And I'm hoping to set up this year or next year a more permanent studio there. And I go back to Paris every month for at least a few days or a week to work together with the team. It's important, even though we can do everything online, it's important to have face-to-face. And then I travel to some of our other construction sites as much as I need to. So in Asia or in Europe, or we have a project in Africa as well. So but it's really
exciting new chapter.
Yeah.
Okay, in one answer you partially replied to two questions I wanted to ask. The first one was, of course, about you working at Moholy-Nagy. It's an architecture school, yeah?
It's a University of Art and Design, but it's a part of the Architecture
Institute. And your experience working with students and what you learned from them, because it's a constant exchange between the staff and the students. And the second one we'll go after that.
So I'm a part of the faculty since 2022 in the Moholy-Nagy University of Art and Design, part of the Architecture Institute. It was formerly the Applied Arts University in Budapest. It's a small school, but a new campus. Really a lot of exciting things happening there. And I think that I first started to be interested in this to be able to develop ideas outside of the office. I think the office is great, but even in competitions, you're somehow restricted to the real world. I thought it would be very interesting to have design discussions in the university. But actually, in the end, the most interesting part isn't that. I think the most interesting part is to see the point of view of future designers. I mean, I think there's somehow, I don't know if I might be wrong, but I feel the difference in point of view between me and people who are 10, 15 years older than me, and now the young students who are 15 years or more younger than me, I think it's a much different, the world has changed a lot, and what they're interested in is not at all the same things. And I really like that, to be connected with what they think is important, because somehow, that will define what the profession needs to do to stay relevant and stay connected to the people. Yeah, so I think that's the most interesting thing, and as I said before, to try to create a platform to share knowledge and to have a discussion and to really have this kind of dialogue. I think that's really energizing.
Great. I mean, it sounds great. And as you're a part of the faculty staff, what is your opinion of the alignment of that academic knowledge that you are transferring to students and the real life challenges that are waiting for them, and whether or not they are prepared for that, or the differences between these two are maybe too big, or there are no, or because that's something that, for example, a lot of us experienced when we finished the faculty, that a lot of things that we taught and that we imagined weren't quite like that.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting topic, and maybe a small context to it. So in the university, there's the Institute of Architecture, but there's also the media department, graphic department, theory. So there's a lot of other creative fields around: photography, graphic design, animation, mobility design. And I think that architecture suffers the most from having this. I mean, the amount of knowledge that you need to be a successful architect is so big that by the time you finish school, no matter what you spend your time on, you're not going to be able to really do anything completely. So it's just the bare minimum to kind of participate. Whereas a graphic designer can finish, 3 years of study or not even finish, and they could be really talented and have commissions. So I think that's kind of unique for the profession. My personal opinion is that I think that, and there's a debate among faculty, among my colleagues about if students need to be prepared to work in an office, the software, technical knowledge, all these things. And I personally think that the profession is changing so much, and it will continue to change so much. And there's, even this year only with AI and everything and the direction things are going, I think that learning the more critical thinking, creative skills, and adaptability is the most important. And then the next 30 years in the career, you'll probably change the technical stuff 2 or 3 times. I mean, so I think that's the most important. So I'm not too worried about students that come out and can't do a building on their own, but they should be able to participate in a team, learn quickly, be open-minded, and figure out their path.
But that was it's I like when the talk flows so naturally that when you are giving one answer, you're stepping right into my next question without me having to post the question. And I wanted to know about your opinion. Which skills would you recommend today's students to develop in order to approach the practical way of working in the future in the right way, and to be to have the right skills in the right time? The right place. The question of place nowadays, with remote working and everything, it's becoming less important.
So I think from the most simple level, I think. So I'm not a proponent for like techno architects or something. I think software is just a means to an end, but not an end in itself. But nevertheless, I think it's really important to be as comfortable with as many softwares as possible. First, in the short term, to have as much. There's nothing worse than getting an offer for a studio that you love and find out that actually they're on another platform and they can't even hire you as an intern, right? That's so I think being and software, I think it's almost like a language. Like so, the ideas is most important, but if you can't use language that someone else can speak,
communicate.
Yeah, if you can't communicate, then you can't even get the idea out of your head. So I think it's important to be fluent, and then the softwares will change. But if you've already know how to learn them, how to use them, then you also set up that kind of learning methodology. But I think the biggest skill, I think, is actually communication. So both verbal communication and visual communication, I think in the end, that's mostly what we do as architects. I mean, you can think even for a house project, maybe you spend X amount of time drawing and a lot of time talking to all the partners and the client to get people in one direction. And the bigger a project gets, the more that's the case. And I think our real value and skill as architects is to have a big picture in mind, have a goal in mind, and to be able to generate momentum with a lot of different people who have the specific knowledge and get everyone to reach that goal. So communication, yeah.
Great, because again, when we are talking about communication, I wanted to know, because you work remotely and you said a few times a month you go to Paris to be present, to be live over there. What this remote kind of work has taught you about communication and about the obstacles working on a project or functioning as a part of an office, being part but not at the same place. It feels different. It must be different. It can't be the same. And what are the conclusions that you have from this type of working, and what would you change, or what do you consider is lost maybe in between, or never said, and it should have been said, or something like that?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned in the whole, let's call it digital transition or virtual transition, the biggest thing that I learned is how different people are in how they prefer to communicate. So, and it's not just culture or generationally, really people have a lot of personal preferences, and that became evident for me since the COVID. So for me, I think that working digitally is easy for me. I mean, I don't have any issue with it. Sometimes things can be faster talking over a table or drawing together, but for me, it was not that big of an obstacle. And I think the advantage of being able to work. I mean, one of the things we try to do as a studio is to really work as one studio. So we have now officially 3 teams. We had 4 at a time before, between Lille, Paris, Shanghai, and Hong Kong. And I thought that this virtual moment, actually, it was great because it leveled the playing field. Before that, France was really, no one did virtual meetings. And so it really leveled the playing field digitally, which was great, and said, okay, now
upgraded them.
You don't have to fly across the world to just talk for 2 minutes about something. You can do it online. But not everyone is as comfortable. So you have to kind of, I think it's impossible to make any overarching conclusions, and you have to be sensitive what works for different people and different projects and different teams, and somehow adapt to them. So that's a bit tricky.
Of course, I mean, we are not all the same.
No.
That's all from me for this moment. I believe that during next few days there will be some more questions, but if I find a way, I will include them in this video. And of course, when it goes online, I will notify you. Thank you for joining us for the forum, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's really great to be here. I'm really excited to meet the architects and students from architecture and design in Belgrade and from Serbia in general, and it's a really great opportunity. Thanks.
Now reminded me, the whole thing has more of a regional character, and there will be people joining us from Hungary.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
So we're in the audience, of course.
Okay.
So you will not be alone.
Great. I look forward to it.
Okay, Zoltán, we can conclude this short interview, and I hope that in future we'll have another chance to update the information and to celebrate the opening of that public art center in Shenzhen and the French pavilion at Expo in Osaka. I hope everyone enjoyed this video as much as I did. And thank you. Of course, like, subscribe, and comment, please, if you have any suggestion what should we do or not do, or what maybe if you have some questions that you would like me to forward to Zoltán, please feel free to comment. Thanks. Bye.